I'm here today to announce to you measures to address the economic difficulties we are facing due mainly to recent global and domestic events. These difficulties have manifested in rising fuel prices, rising inflation and cost of living, exchange rate depreciation, rising interest rates, and revenue mobilization challenges. Government had its first regular quarterly retreat for 2022 from 18th to 20th March at Pejuasi, concluding in Accra on Monday, the 21st of March. During the retreat, Cabinet deliberated extensively on a number of issues and approved a number of measures to support current efforts to address the challenges we are facing. Also on Monday, March 21st, 2022, the Bank of Ghana announced a number of complementary monetary measures to address the rising cost of goods and services on the market and the worrying performance of the cedi against major currencies. Ladies and gentlemen, it's important to stress right from the onset that the difficulties we are facing in Ghana are not peculiar to Ghana. It should also be stressed that several governments in both developed and developing countries are busily coming out with various prescriptions to bring their economies back to work and on track. After the devastating impact of COVID-19, which distorted global supply chains and the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. If we look at the world today, there are two clear forces shaping global events: the impact of the novel coronavirus pandemic and the crisis in Ukraine. With the virus, the records show that our decision to focus first on protecting lives and then livelihoods has paid off. By February, globally, some 7.03% of those infected by COVID-19 had died. For Africa, the figure was 4.03%, about 251,444 people. In comparison, less than 0.89%, that is 1,445 people of infected people in Ghana died. May their souls rest in peace. Against all odds, but due to firm leadership, bold initiative, and responsive citizens, Ghana has so far collectively managed the virus remarkably well. But we knew that Ghana, like most countries in the world, had a tall list of coronavirus-induced bills to pay from 2020 and 2021, and came out of plans and policies to boost investor confidence and job prospects for 2022 and beyond. As you recall, we lost 13.1 billion of revenue and had to increase our expenditure by 14.2 billion, with combined fiscal impact of 26 billion Ghana cedis, about 6.8% of GDP in just 1 year. For government, 2022 was now the time to go full steam ahead in healing the economy to create jobs, especially for our young generation. This was evidenced by our growth figures, averaging 5.2% in 2021, up from 0.4% in 2020, and a startling 6.6% growth in the third quarter of 2021. We outline our comprehensive recovery program, the 100 billion cedi Ghana Cares Obatampa program, to focus on the rail sector to do just that. Our 10 billion Ghana Youth Start program will be the most historic intervention for youth employment in our country. However, three things that we did not and could not predict hit us. That, one, that Parliament will approve government's 2022 budget statement, the appropriation and its expenditure plans, and then turn around to vote against one of the key revenue generation measures that was being introduced, the e-levy. That the unyielding stance of the minority in Parliament against the e-levy would gravely affect investor confidence in our capacity to implement our programs and settle our debts, triggering a downgrading by credit rating agencies, and now leaving the cedi vulnerable as we could not access the international capital markets. Ladies and gentlemen, the third hit was the launch of the attack on Ukraine by Russia on February 24, 2022. The war in Ukraine could not have come at a worse time for the global economy. Already, global efforts towards economic recovery from the devastation wreaked by the coronavirus pandemic were being disturbed by supply chain disruptions, surging inflation, and uncertainties in the financial markets with anticipated hikes in interest rates. After February 24, we saw a sharp hike in global oil prices, food prices shocks, especially wheat, oil and gas price hikes, capital risks, aversion, flight to safety, affecting private capital flows to emerging markets as a whole, and all with serious macroeconomic implications. For example, crude oil prices per barrel increased by 75.3% from $74.17 in December 2021, when the 2022 budget was passed, to $130 on 7th March 2022, before moderating to $115 as of today. Crude oil prices crossed the $100 mark for the first time since September 2014. We recall that prior to the pandemic, we had built resilience through the implementation of bold and prudent economic measures. By April 2019, we had successfully, as a country, completed the 4-year IMF program. We did so and more by achieving an annual average real growth, GDP growth of 7% between 2017 and 2019, from 3.4% in 2016, maintaining a fiscal deficit below 5% of GDP for 3 consecutive years, maintaining a positive primary balance for 3 consecutive years, which put our debt on a sustainable path, lowering lending rates by over 10 percentage points, restructuring the banking sector to protect the savings of 4.6 million depositors, and strengthening the financial sector. So far, government has spent over $25 billion since 2018 to clean up the financial sector, reducing inflation from 15.4% in December 2016 to 7.6% in 2019, and preserving the integrity of the local industry. Improving gross international reserves to reach $8.6 billion, or about 4 months of import cover by 2020. Introducing the most ambitious social welfare policy ever seen in our country, the Free SHS program. Constructing and rehabilitating more roads, cumulative of about 6,250 kilometers, completing 6 of 11 interchanges and flyovers, more than any other government in our history. Employing more new teachers, nurses, doctors, agri extension officers, and young graduates than any government in our history. Saving the entire financial sector from inherited, neglected crises that has cost government some $25 billion so far. Instigating more value for money audits on public procurements than any government in our history, and investing more resources in the police, military, governance, and anti-corruption institutions than ever before. It is this proven record of fixing what is broken that gave the MPP government the confidence to tackle head-on the devastation unleashed by COVID-19. And it is the same can-do and will-do attitude that gives us hope that we will overcome the current crisis. We are not a people to bow to the spirit of despondency and despair. As well as threatening global peace, the war in Ukraine has had far-reaching impact. We do not know how long the conflict will last, but it is clear that it has already forced many countries in Europe and beyond to adjust their economic plans for 2022, and Africa is likely to be amongst the worst hit outside of Ukraine. Rapid assessment of the war's impact on trade and development shows a rapidly worsening outlook for the world economy, with the situation especially alarming for African countries. The Russia-Ukraine war has also compounded the global supply chain and trade disruptions brought about by COVID-19 pandemic, as well as adversely impacted the dreaded 3 Fs: food security, fuel price escalation, and financing conditions that's impacting living conditions with the capacity to derail global recovery efforts in 2022 and beyond. Global inflation trending upwards has led to central banks raising interest rates globally, resulting in tight financing conditions and reversal of capital inflows, especially to emerging markets. For example, the U.S. Federal Reserve Bank announced a hike in interest rates by 0.25 percentage points on 16 March and has signaled more such to follow. Similarly, the Bank of England has raised its policy rate by another 25 basis points to 0.75% on 17th March 2022. We've seen the highest inflation in US, UK, Germany, and other advanced countries since 1974. The US's inflation increased by 6.5 percentage points from 1.4% in January 2022 to 7.9% in February 2022. Similarly, inflation in Germany increased by 4.1 percentage points from 1% in January 2022 to 5.1% in February 2022. Since the COVID-19 pandemic struck, more than 60% of African sovereigns have suffered downgrades across the region. Ghana witnessed a downgrade from Fitch on 21st January 2022 to B- with a negative outlook, while Moody's downgraded Ghana to Caa1 with a stable outlook on 4 February 2022, even though S&P affirmed Ghana's rating at B- with a stable outlook on 7 February 2022. These downgrades have had implications for market access, exchange rate depreciation, capital flight, and increased cost of financing. Ladies and gentlemen, on the domestic front, the challenges include the impasse in Parliament, which is adversely affecting government business, such as the passage of some revenue bills, including the e-levy bill. This is creating uncertainty, which has been highlighted as a key risk by the rating agencies and affected our credit spreads, limiting our access to the international capital markets. The adverse global developments are impacting severely on exchange rate depreciation and domestic inflation as investors take refuge in safer assets by stocking up on the dollar, which is considered the safest currency to hold. The cedi has not been spared. Cumulatively, our local currency has depreciated by 15.6% against the US dollar and 13.4% and 13.3% respectively against the pound sterling and euro in the year to 23rd March 2022. This understandably is causing a lot of anxiety among our traders and consumers alike. However, we also need to recognize that in spite of it all, the cedi has held under these extreme challenges better than it did between 2014 and 2015. This is because the fundamentals are much stronger. The Bank of Ghana has announced measures to address the exchange rate depreciation, and we believe in the propriety of the measures they outlined on Monday. The rising international price of crude oil and the exchange rate depreciation are affecting the ex-pump prices of fuel domestically as it feeds into high transportation fares and hence inflation. For example, the average ex-pump price of diesel for 3 OMCs, Gold, Total, and Vivo increased by 59.7% from 6.7 cedis per liter on 1st January 2022 to 10.7 cedis per liter by the 21st of March 2022. Ghana is not alone here. From Angola and Malawi through Nigeria and Rwanda to Senegal down to Zimbabwe, fuel prices are soaring. Some neighboring countries are not only dealing with rising petrol prices, but also scarcity on petroleum products, leading to long queues at filling stations. It remains the case, however, that one of the biggest drivers of price increases in goods and services in Ghana is fuel price hike. Inflation has surged to 15.7% at the end of February 2022. Food inflation increased from 12.8% in December 2021 to 17.4% in February 2022, while non-food inflation rose from 12.5% to 14.5% over the same period. Ladies and gentlemen, provisional data on the stock of debt as at the end of December 2021 show that the stock of public debt increased to 351.8 billion, 80.1% of GDP, compared with 218.2 billion, 61.2% of GDP at the end of 2022 before the pandemic. Of the total debt stock, domestic debt was 181.8 billion, 51.7%, while the external debt was 170 billion, 48.3%. Ladies and gentlemen, the global and domestic developments I've outlined above are affecting the effective implementation of the budget. Urgent and decisive actions are therefore required to address the challenges and ensure the achievements of the objectives and targets of the 2022 budget, including unleashing the entrepreneurial verve of the Ghanaian youth. Whilst we are in the process of revising the 2022 fiscal framework to reflect current developments with a view to go to Parliament to seek approval for the revisions during the mid-year review in July, government will pursue additional measures to ensure the achievement of the fiscal deficit target of 7.4% of GDP. Ladies and gentlemen, government had already started the new year with spending cuts as Parliament failed to approve key revenue streams at the appropriate time. In January 2022, government announced and immediately began implementing a 20% expenditure cut as part of fiscal stabilization and debt sustainability measures. This has been done through the quarterly expenditure ceiling allotment to MDAs. Quarter 1 allotment is currently in implementation, whilst Quarter 2 allotment will be issued shortly. The Ministry has strengthened its expenditure monitoring systems and processes to ensure effective implementation of these measures. In addition, government has decided to take the following measures to ensure the achievement of the fiscal deficit target of 7.4% of GDP for 2022. So, expenditure cutting measures. Discretionary spending is to be further cut by an additional 10%. The Ministry of Finance is currently meeting with MDAs to review their spending plans for the rest of the 3 quarters to achieve the discretionary expenditure cuts. 2, these times call for very efficient use of energy resources. In line with this, there will be a 50% cut in fuel coupon allocations for all political appointees and heads of government institutions, including SOEs, effective 1st February 2022. With immediate effect, government has imposed a complete moratorium on the purchase of imported vehicles for the rest of the year. This will affect all new orders, especially four-wheel drives. We will ensure that the overall effect is to reduce total vehicle purchases by the public sector by at least 50% for the period. Again, with immediate effect, government has imposed a moratorium on all foreign travels except pre-approved critical statutory travels. 5, government will conclude on ongoing measures to eliminate ghost workers from the government payroll by end December 2022. Government will conclude the renegotiations of the energy sector IPP's capacity charges by end of quarter 3 2022 to further reduce excess capacity payments by 20% to generate a total savings of 1.5 billion Ghana cedis. We will impose a moratorium on establishment of new public sector institutions by end of April 2022. Prioritize ongoing public projects over new projects. This is to enhance the efficient use of limited public funds over the period by finishing ongoing or stalled but approved projects. Reduce expenditure on all meetings and conferences by 50% effective immediately. Pursue a comprehensive reprofiling strategies to reduce the interest expense burden on the fiscal, and liaise with organized labor and employers association to implement with immediate effect the measures captured in the Kwao Declaration of the 2022 National Labour Conference, including reforms towards addressing salary inequities, inequalities, example Article 71, office holders. The weak link between pay to productivity and sustainability of the payroll. Let me say this. President Akufo-Addo has absolutely no intention to roll back on any major policy like the free SHS. We see education as the best enabler for sustainable economic growth and transformation and social mobility, and will do more to improve on it for it to serve more and better our children. Ladies and gentlemen, in addition, and finally, government approved the ministers and the heads of SOEs to contribute to cut 30% of their salaries from April to December 2022 to the Consolidated Fund. We would like to thank the Council of State in their leadership in complementing the government policy on this. All of these measures, ladies and gentlemen, are aimed at ensuring that we achieve the 7.4 deficit target set in the 2022 budget. Fuel price mitigation measures. Ladies and gentlemen, the rising prices of fuel at the pumps is influenced largely by the rising crude oil price on the international market and the exchange rate depreciation. Though the rise in crude oil prices should have been to our benefit on net basis, Ghana's import of petroleum products amounts to 5.2 times the value of proceeds from its crude oil exports. In 2021, for example, we exported $3.947 billion of crude, of which Ghana's portion was $513 million. However, we imported $2,719 of crude and finished products. So the purported windfall gain in foreign exchange is quite a mirage. To date, the average export price of diesel and petrol have increased by 57% and 45% respectively. Unlike in other countries where the hike in crude oil prices and exchange rate volatility are leading to shortages in supply of petroleum products, government is implementing measures to guarantee constant supply of petroleum products. To mitigate the impact of the rising price of petroleum products at the pump for the next 3 months, government has decided to reduce margins in petroleum price build-up by a total of 15 pesos per litre with effect from 1st April. The details are as follows. Bus margin reduced by 2 pesos per litre, Unified Petroleum Pricing Fund margin reduced by 9 pesos per litre, fuel margin reduced by 1 peso per litre, primary distribution margin reduced by 3 pesos per litre. Ladies and gentlemen, these reductions in margins are expected to reduce prices of petrol by 1.6% and diesel by 1.4%. We anticipate that the measures taken to strengthen the currency will help further stabilize the prices at the pump. Ladies and gentlemen, in addition, the NPA and the Ministry of Energy are in discussions with the OMCs to reduce their margins within the spirit of burden sharing. The government will do all it can to ensure consistent supply of fuel and manage the rate of export price increase by ensuring that the Bank of Ghana has access to adequate foreign exchange to support this. Revenue measures. Ladies and gentlemen, cutting down on expenditures alone will not be enough. Our focus is therefore twofold: to control expenditure and to raise more revenue domestically. As such, we will therefore begin the implementation and collection of the revised property rate by end of April 2022. We will implement the e-VAT, e-commerce, and e-gaming initiatives by end of April 2022. We will roll out a simplified tax filing mobile application for all eligible taxpayers by July 2022. We will impress upon Parliament to fast-track the passage of the e-levy bill, tax exemptions bill, and fees and charges bill. Prioritize the revenue assurance compliance and enforcement program, the RACE program, to plug revenue leakages, especially at the ports, the infamous fuel bunkering cartels, and small-scale mining exporters cabal. Government will partner the private sector to also introduce digital systems to monitor quarrying, sand winning, and salt winning to get more revenue from our natural resources. And immediately enforce the no duty, no exit policy at the MPS terminal at the Tema port to improve revenue collection. Ladies and gentlemen, Government of Ghana is to conclude external financing arrangement of up to $2 billion in the next 2 to 6 weeks in line with approved external financing for 2022 and for liability management and to manage the slide of the city. MOF, Ministry of Finance, will also work with the Central Bank to review the foreign exchange retention policy in line with approved external financing for 2022 and for liability management. Additionally, the following measures will be implemented over the medium term: wean off public tertiary institutions from government payroll and provide them with a fixed amount block grant instead. Pursue reforms to address structural challenges in public financial management, including procurement and commitment control, payroll management, and human resource management. It is too early, ladies and gentlemen, to say the COVID-19 pandemic is over, but it is good to acknowledge that Ghana has handled it excellently. We have emerged from its deadliest and most economically damaging phase. If the measures we have outlined in our economic recovery program are executed as planned, the Ghanaian economy should return to pre-pandemic levels across most economic indicators by the end of the year. On the other major event driving the global economy, we recognize that the world is 4 weeks into this terrible war, and it is quite clear that both the occupation of Ukraine and the range of sanctions imposed on Russia will have profound effects both in the short and long term for global markets. The longer the conflict goes on, for the greater will be the disruption to the global economy. We shall continue to monitor the situation very closely and make further adjustments if and when needed. We may have no control of the trajectory of the conflict, but it only reminds us how necessary it is for Ghanaians to assert greater control over our own destiny. That we can do if we share in the sacrifices before us to strengthen our capacity for greater self-reliance even in this interdependent world. Government remains optimistic that the economy will grow even bigger this year. The challenge now is to marshal this economic growth before us in the right direction and ensure that it benefits Ghanaians across the board. Ladies and gentlemen, we are confident that these measures will address the immediate and short-term challenges confronting our nation. Government remains resolute and committed to entrenching the structural transformation of our economy in the long term. To this end, we are aggressively pursuing key interventions such as 1D, 1F, Ghana Cares, and the U-Start programs to improve our ability to locally produce more goods and optimize the opportunities AFCFTA offers us. It is important that as a country, we reduce our dependence on imports and increase local production. Public institutions are reminded of government's policy to buy locally produced goods. It is critical that Ghanaians reconsider their preference and consume more locally produced goods to support the economy and guarantee decent jobs for our people. Ladies and gentlemen, your government, the Akufo-Addo administration, is determined to turn things around and has the skills, discipline, and compassion to do so. But to do so, we must not allow our fortunes to be misdirected by speculators and naysayers, those who only thrive when we allow avoidable uncertainties to hold sway in the affairs of the nation. I pray that peace be within the walls of Parliament and sobriety within its towers as we go back to Parliament to introduce our revenue bills. Ladies and gentlemen, these measures outlined today will significantly improve the macro-fiscal situation towards a restoration of confidence and safeguard the achievement of the 2022 budget deficit target of 7.4% of the GDP. These measures have been carefully designed to ensure that growth and spending on social protection are, however, not compromised. Ladies and gentlemen, these are truly challenging times globally. No country has been spared. Government therefore calls on all Ghanaians to stand together. Together we shall surely overcome. Ladies and gentlemen, the people of Ghana, we can do it together. This is not the first time an MPP government working together with the people of Ghana has succeeded in overcoming an economic challenge of this nature. We have demonstrated time and time again our ability to overcome with you. First, in 2001, the MPP government, led by former President Kufuor, together with the people of Ghana, brought the country out of severe economic difficulties. Second, in 2017, the MPP government, led by President Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo, together with the people of Ghana, brought the country out of the economic doldrums in which we were at the end of 2016. This third time, still under President Akufo-Addo, working together with the people of Ghana, will not be an exception. Ladies and gentlemen, I've had the privilege of engaging in a number of town hall meetings from Koforidua to Takoradi, to Tamale, to Wa and Ho, and the resolve of our people to burden share for a better life for all of us is palpable. In particular, they want everyone to pay taxes. They want government to be accessible. They want Parliament to get on with its work. They want employment for our youth. They want agriculture and industry to thrive. They want government to cut its coat. They want us to tackle our debt problem and raise more revenue and to prosecute offenders. Ladies and gentlemen, our media review will reveal the successes of what we have done. This would ensure that the structural reforms are crystallized, reduce fiscal dominance during this period, and ensure fiscal and monetary policy coherence. Let me end by a quotation from Jeremiah. Let us seek, all of us, the peace and prosperity of our nation. Let's pray to the Lord for it, because if it prospers, you too will prosper. Together, we'll confront the macroeconomic challenges head on, stabilize the economy, and set it on the path of economic transformation for all. So yes, we'll bring in additional $1 to $2 billion to stabilize the slide of the currency. We have enumerated a number of issues to ensure expenditure cuts, and we have put in place strategies to ensure that we have the supply of fuel that is required and maintain and stabilize the increases. But let us also remember that this is a global phenomenon in which we are part of, but we can and we will overcome. God bless our whole land, Ghana.